Hello, and welcome back to the Power Podcast, with your host, me, someone else, and also another person. I think I can't keep track. This
Got the
week,
brain phrase.
damn it, you got in with the pun already. This week we're going to be talking about something very chilling.
I mean, obviously,
Keep giving.
we've had to do this 3 times, and the puns get worse every single time.
You know why? You know why? It's because OBS kept giving us the cold shoulder.
So OBS crashed, and then someone knocked on my door about 2 minutes in. So yeah, that's a thing. So this is our third recording. Let's hope that it's not going to be, another repeated one. So let's just get on with it. Last time we had the holiday empowerment. This time we're not doing holiday empowerment because that's not how we work. So this time we're doing cryokinesis.
Yeah, it's gently related in a way because, before we had like the holidays and now it's like the soggy winter, episode.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is cryokinesis, aka ice manipulation or ice generation, cold manipulation, thermokinesis, not thermokinesis, or as I like to say, hypothermokinesis. So therefore, it is not hyper, it's hypo, meaning that the user can control lower temperatures and the coldness of something. Well,
I really like that. I think that is a good fit. If that is a thing that you came up with organically and it hasn't been done before, patent it. Because I really like that term.
Fair enough. So, we're just going to jump right into it because we've had to do this 3 times and I think that we've already gotten to the bottom of what this is. So, obviously, let's just go down the list of the usual main blue-collar abilities. First one is, can control ice.
And snow, presumably.
Oh yeah, and snow, I guess, yeah. Anything that is considered frozen, at least frozen liquid or frozen water, it can just be frozen anything, I guess, but as long as it's the specific stuff that is crystallized H2O or crystallized stuff that used to once be liquid. Well, I guess it actually does have to count as something that is actually considered to be some way, some shape, some form water. So there we go. So that's it.
There's like cold temperatures and stuff, but we've covered that already.
Oh yeah. You can manipulate, temperatures. You can lower temperatures. You can alter temperatures. You can pretty much do all sorts of stuff. Oh, sorry about that. I've just turned my voice mod on, so that therefore it might pick up my voice a little better. I'm sorry to anyone's ears who I may have burst with that one. So ice control, telekinetic with only ice, can make ice colder or water colder to the point of which it can be frozen. Any other abilities that anyone else has seen in the usual commonplace of ice-based powers?
Actually, there was one I thought of. Like how we have like thermal vision and like sensing people. Like you could also like presumably the opposite could be true that you sense cold from wherever. Like you just map it out.
I mean, thermal vision still works with cold. It just changes the color from red to dark blue.
Yeah,
but
I mean, technically a pyrokinetic and a cryokinetic could theoretically have the same exact power set, where one is resistant to cold, the other one is resistant to heat. Their thermal sensors, can still pick up because it's based on the differentiations of heat, and then the other one it can, differentiate the differences in temperatures, like what is cold, what is no longer cold, how cold is something, how not cold is something.
like if you looked at Mr. Freeze in his suit, you'd see just dark purple or blue. Yeah. And then the rest of him around it would be like probably somewhat orange or yellowy.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I see what you mean, Alex. I see what you mean.
Oh, also, talking of Mr. Freeze, actually, like, technically, I mean, this is kind of a wild one, really, but because of, like, your freezing abilities, wouldn't, well, like, you have a kind of immortality, almost, by, like, suspending animation through freezing.
Okay, so there are versions of this. I mean, if something's bodies or cells in its body, is immune to cell death whilst in extreme colds, theoretically they could be put in a suspended form of animation. Whether that's actually true, that's I mean, yeah.
It's called suspension of disbelief.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I guess, yeah, technically. If we're talking about actual cryokinetics, yes, technically we have seen people with ice-based powers live for very long times, if not live indefinitely, because the ice, the whole concept is, as long as I'm still cold, I will never melt, therefore I will never age. Mr. Freeze had that. I know that there's another character, it's either in DC or Marvel, that had a similar feat. But I know that there have been others that have ice-based powers, and they're practically immortal so long as they are not killed, meaning that like they just never age. So I guess you could say age deceleration or age, aging immunity or something.
Not really an immortality, but sort of just a longevity thing.
Well, it depends,
it's
because
like, slow down.
Technically, in the weakest forms of immortality, I think we went over this a while back. The weakest forms of immortality are anything that is staving off the usual process of death. Even aging is a form of mortality, and therefore, if you are able to stop something from aging or stop something from dying from the access of aging, it's a form of mortality or immortality. Sorry. Check it out on our previous episode, Immortality.
Yeah, because we totally remember everything that happened in it.
That's such an old episode now. It's so weird to think about it.
Also, I forgot we did Immortality at one point.
We either did Immortality or we did Immortality as a part of Healing Factor.
I think we might have did it with like a two thing.
Maybe. Who knows? Maybe you know in the comments below.
Yes, Connor.
I'd say it's okay. Look, it's a stupid, crazy good power, and I'll get into why it's. I want to hear your opinions first, but I'm gonna just say this now. I genuinely believe it is more overpowered than pyrokinesis. But I'll let you have your opinions on the power first, and then we'll actually dive into what that actually means.
Do you want to go first, Sam?
Go first, actually. I want to hear your opinion first, then I'll go my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if it's really like overpowered. So, I mean, it is like really good power. So much so that there's like there's just so many bloody characters. Like it's even been a joke in a few episodes of Robot Chicken that there's just so many supervillains and superheroes that use ice powers that it's just like it's become a bit of deluge because it is just such a fun power. You can just like you can create constructs with it. You can like extend your life with it. You can happily free someone to death. You can like
or not so happily free someone to death. Well, you don't know.
I'm very happy when I freeze someone to death. I don't know about you. I'm static. Like, I still think that I'd like to see how you rationalize that actually, because I think that fire is still more powerful because it has more destructive capabilities.
Okay.
And it's like, and it's fast. Like with ice, you kind of need it needs a little bit of build up. I think it depends on how long how quick you can like generate ice.
Well,
but
my main question. Hang on a sec. My main question was really sort of what is your opinion of the power? We'll get in, as I said, we'll get into like why I believe that it's most powerful. I'll make my case, and then we'll sort of go into why you might disagree or how you might agree if there's any possibility of agreeing in my argument that I will bring up. But yeah, I mean, like,
Regrettably, for once, I have to agree with Joe.
Well, hang on. Don't agree with me yet. Hear my argument, because you might actually disagree with me after you hear my argument.
No. The reason. Should I tell you the simple reason why?
No. Let's go with opinions first, because I want to hear opinions before we start talking about it. Because I actually got this, which was sometimes our opinions change if we hear it's really OP, and I want to see if that changes. So
I quite like ice. Ice powers, I will admit, tend to be quite generic. Most characters tend to use them very generically with either, I will shoot you with an ice beam, or I will make a sliding floor. I'll make ice weapons with my hands or something.
Yeah.
But I think ice is like a lot of my favorite characters use ice. It's mostly because their actual characteristics meld well with being ice users. What I mean?
Is that character by any chance Sub-Zero?
I wasn't even, to be honest, I wasn't actually using that character in mind.
Oh, okay.
There's another character, and for once, god damn it, it's a character you like too, regrettably. I mean, Sub-Zero is a great character, but it's not the character I was thinking of.
Who are you thinking of?
I was thinking of Captain Zero. Captain Cold.
Oh, but he hasn't got ice powers, he's got a nice gun.
Actually, Joe.
Here we go.
In a series of comics that was in the New 52, he did actually gain ice powers due to him and another character gained like powers based on their weapons.
Oh, is it him
because
and
of some?
Wave?
I think so, because of some technological experiment gone wrong. Was then quickly sorted out to the fact that in Forever Evil he just got those stripped away. But for those couple of issues, he did have ice powers.
Well, you know what's funny about that is that, I actually do know for a fact that, he does have in the Rebirth comics a resistance to the cold. So there's a moment where he's actually fist fighting the Flash, where he's in a disadvantage because he can't speed up as much, and therefore he just literally just beats him with his own bare hands because he's in this freezing tundra, and it's just I don't feel the cold, Flash, bush, and he's just hitting him, and this is no, go on.
Greg, wasn't it because that was another Flash? It wasn't his Flash.
No. That is actually he is actually fighting Barry and Flash. They sort of build it up because they want to basically bring the Flash into Iron Heights so that they can basically beat the crap out of him. But this actually sort of brings it into why I wanted to sort of talk about this, which was it is very versatile, as you said. It can be very universal, as Alex said, and it can be very OP, as I said. But there's one particular reason why I like it. It's so much of all of these things that there are so many different things that you can do with it. If you have a resistance to the cold, you have an advantage against other people, just like if you have a resistance to heat, you have an advantage against those who don't. If you have the ability to make things colder, you can also make things a lot easier for people. I mean, yeah, technically, as I think Kane was talking with us on the pyrokinesis one, if you have fire, you might be able to cook things, meaning that, you could be your own chef with your own fire, and that could work. But I mean, it's a lot easier to cool things down, and even if you freeze something solid, it's a lot easier to freeze something solid and be like, oh well, that's happened. Whereas if you heat something too much and it's burnt, it's irredeemable, especially in terms of food. Yeah, ice. I feel like the argument that you have there for ice being so generic, or at least
hang on.
Let me finish. Or at least used super generically. I agree with you, but I also agree that fire does the same. Fire is probably the most generic way that people show a special power. Either that, or if it's an anime, it's the ability to cut or break things without touching them. Where they can just, pull out their sword, swing it, and then the building 10 blocks away just gets cut in half. Or throws a punch, someone slightly dodges, and an entire building just literally behind them is entirely destroyed.
Are you saying fire, the generic, like fire and ice, is equivalent to anime slashing
It basically
in
in a lot.
genericness?
I mean, well,
So many times anime,
the ice
true.
slide, and the basic flamethrower, yes, and we see that a lot. However, I will still argue that it is one of the most overpowered elemental abilities that there is. And the reason that I argue this is because if you have a fire and it can heat up to 100 degrees, 200 degrees, 1,000 degrees, yeah, that's insane. But the amount of energy that it's burning up to do so, how much oxygen, how much of the fuel that it's consuming, is the heat warping things around it? What is it destroying? If something becomes cold enough, if it even goes to the point of -40, water that was boiling just a few seconds ago, thrown into the air, freezes instantly. Once it gets past a certain point in -50 or even -80, you can actually start seeing that there is no longer the ability to have it where moisture is in the air, as it immediately falls and becomes part of the ice on the floor, meaning that when you breathe in and breathe out, you're no longer seeing your breath because there's no more moisture within the air or the atmosphere. Once it gets past below 100, most people will go into a shock or even hypothermia. If you haven't already by this point, by the way, because most people can't really survive for that long outside, in -40. I mean, obviously, if you have nice, thick, multiple layers, like if you're in Canada or Alaska, you'll probably do well. But still, there is still a threshold before you get to a certain point. And that is only at like -80 or -100. Now, the scientific way to explain this is because as things get colder, they actually get stiller. They no longer have excitement in their atoms or their molecules, and therefore they start getting, sort of tighter and tighter fits, or they become slower and slower until they're basically almost entirely still. And at this point, that's where you sort of find rigidity, but even more so, just simple water. When it starts freezing and crystallizing, it can begin to expand almost anything it's inside or on top of, meaning that it can eventually destroy metals. Now, the biggest thing for this is that, yes, you can melt metals, but almost every single metal in the world, if it is frozen solid enough, it can become brittle to the point of which it can shatter like glass when hit with something of equal original metal density. So if you have tungsten and are somehow able to freeze it solid, and you hit it with a tungsten hammer, it will break. Or at least that's the theory behind it. I've never done that. That would be cool, though. But the other...
you can take down entire buildings with that sort of thing, because buildings are taken down by that sort of thing. You can completely ruin someone's pipes and flood them out. You can expand and contract the bricks so quickly that it shatters and takes down the whole thing. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, fire.
It gets even crazier. Theoretically, if your ability is supposed to be the ability to do so, it technically means your power isn't just necessarily the ability to control ice. If you can control the temperature of water or ice, that technically means you have the ability to absorb or make energy and excitation within atoms and molecules and absorb its energy, meaning that you then can do the exact thing that can put out flames, because you can decelerate the motion within the molecules and remove their energy. Now, when you have molten objects, to make them colder, basically you're pretty much doing that. You're zapping it of its, or you're sapping it of its heat and energy. Therefore, meaning if you had the ability to control the power of temperature to a certain degree, even being able to have it that no matter what you touch, you can always bring it down to even -10. It means that, you have the ability to absorb almost any and every energy. It just really depends on what your threshold is for the amount of how much you can cool it down. I mean, one particular character that I've seen before actually had it where it's a bar of metal tungsten and they freeze it within about 5 seconds. The amount of energy that is required to do that, or should I say the amount of energy that she was zapping away, was technically more impressive than the amount of energy that is required to heat it up. Because it is able to freeze it faster than the laws of nature normally would allow. I mean, even if you had it in a fridge or a freezer, it would still take a long time. I mean, if you've ever seen the 1,000 degree knife challenge things that basically started Mr. Gear's channel, it takes a while for it to cool down by natural means, even if it's cutting into stuff. You'd actually have to leave it in, ice for a short period of time. But to make something hot, although that it is exciting the atoms, it still would take a little longer than for something to get colder. I don't know. It's just, if you have enough power over, if you have enough control over, or if it's a vast enough depth of temperature control, you technically have a more dangerous ability than fire. Because covering someone up in a surface amount of flame is going to be painful. You can even sap away all of their oxygen and therefore suffocate them. But if you can freeze even just the surface of their skin, the amount of damage is going to be irreparable. I mean, frostbite alone is awful. Nerve damage, tissue damage, permanent damage. But if you even just froze the entire first layer of skin, the amount of lacerations that they'd be covered in as soon as it began to crack would be awful. Imagine being covered in 100 paper cuts all over the surface of your skin.
It's I don't know. I mean, I still would prefer, I don't know, because it's
I mean,
technically you still feel more pain burning than you do freezing to death, but it's still pretty horrible. I think it's
although another particular one is if you are starting to freeze to death, you are freezing tired. If you burn to death, you're burning scared and incredibly anxiety riddled. The amount of pain and the amount of fear and the amount of, I guess, adrenaline going through your body would be awful. If you're being frozen to death, your body can't even really cope with it, and it just shuts down faster than it would be,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's it depends, because some people who get hypothermia, they get hot instead of cold, so they end up feeling like they're burning to death anyway. So
yes, that is true. It's a paradoxical undressing. That's more of the damage that it does to your nerves. I mean, yeah, theoretically, fire can do similar damage to your nerves. I mean, technically, any temperature or even electricity can do damage to your nerves. Yeah, that's sort of my argument for it being overpowered. I guess we'll go into this though, which is probably why we sort of brought this up. Unique usage of it. Again, this can either be something that you've just made up or you've found and therefore wanted to talk about. I'll go with Sam first.
My internet kind of failed there. Did we do the talk about whether we think it's stronger than fire yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. And you didn't let me do my argument yet?
Well, Sam,
contemptible songs.
You were quiet, and I just assumed that you wanted to talk.
Well, you were talking for a long time. I was waiting for you to get to a point so I could speak.
Either way, Sam. Yeah. What unique ice power?
I'm used all.
Have you got?
Well, fine. I'll do unique ice power as opposed to my argument. Well, just touching someone, absorbing all the body heat or just touching something and absorbing all the heat inside them.
That was part of my argument. That's okay.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. And then being able to more or less store up the energy to send it out in a different form. So, like fire, for instance. So absorbing it and then sending it out in a different form.
Okay.
Or even just speeding up someone's molecule so they get a big rash. Like it punch someone. And it does kind of extra damage.
Okay, so sort of like a thermo sort of energy stockpile.
Kind of absorbing energy to do more energy. So it does. So you have not only just ice, not only just kind of cold damage. You can also do fire damage because what you're doing is you're storing up quantum energy.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Yeah. That could be quite useful, especially because as I was sort of discussing earlier, like if you have the ability to absorb energy, like thermal energy, from objects or from beings, it basically means that you have almost an infinite potential of how much or what you can basically sap away. So I mean, technically, if you could store that instead of having it, you just basically mean that the energy is dispersed or gone because it's sapped out of it. And instead of it just going away, it's actually absorbed into you. It basically means that you have like two incredibly dangerous powers in one.
Exactly, and more importantly, if you're strong enough, because there's no limit on how hot something can be. There is a limit to how cold something can be.
Yes, although I'm going to be a bit of a dick, and I'm going to say I would argue that technically isn't a cryokinetic power. It's a power that has a cryokinetic after effect.
Then what about we were talking about which one? Going to zero or my power?
No. As you said, the absorption thing, because technically it's they are absorbed of their body heat, yes, but it's more of an after effect. The main ability is just basically to stockpile and have power. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Well, that was the power.
Oh, okay. Alex, unique uses or unique power, ice-based powers that you've seen or you come up with?
Well, I don't really. That's the thing, because I'm kind of like they can't kind of generically portrayed most of the time, and I'm having difficulty really thinking of them that haven't been, that everybody doesn't know, like telling the constructs or whatever, or what Sam just said.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's like covered all bases, but there is like one that I was kind of interesting. It's an anime I was watching, Darwin's Game, where anyway, without giving spoilers, there are two characters that work in combination with each other. One is a hydrokinetic, and the other is a cryokinetic.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's like basically they can only really work when water is present. So they can't just conjure water out of nowhere, and the hydrokinetic can't turn anything into ice, so they have to work in combination with each other in order to get the full, benefits of their powers. So yeah, they end up like creating huge huge ice constructs, but like walling people in so that they drown in certain areas. They basically just take water from wherever they can and take it. They also like can manipulate frozen things in the frozen aisle. Again, because it's frozen, so it's attached to ice. So
yeah. No, I quite like that. To be fair, that there's a version of that in My Hero Academia. A guy called Gaten, who like starts controlling the ice within a town, and so it's like ice machines start just firing out ice, and like there's a couple of fridges that have the store freezers that basically just throw bags of ice. As eventually just creates an entire dragon construct out of ice. But later on, it turns out that you can not only control the ice, you can also control its temperature. So eventually he throws a few cubes down into a main water supply and then freezes the whole pipe so that he has even more ammunition later on. But yeah, I'd say a unique version that I've seen that I actually quite liked, and it is a JoJo's reference. So the ability was called White Album. Basically,
come on.
Yeah. Basically, the ability was it covers the user in water, and then it basically allows the user to control the temperature of not only surroundings around them, but also the suit. Basically, it's an entire suit covered in ice, but the user is immune to the cold damage that it would deal. The density of the ice itself, or the density of the armored suit around him, is basically the same strength as ice, but because the ice can eventually be absolute sub-zero and incredibly solid, it basically means that it was almost as strong as steel. Especially because if bullets or objects were hitting it, it would start sapping away at its heat and energy until eventually it no longer had power. The user could also freeze a certain radius around them to the point of which it was so cold that a guy accidentally bumped into a window on the car and lost his finger without knowing it, as it was still attached to the car window.
Ooh.
Kind of grim. There's all kinds of times that he uses this ability, but the most ridiculous one is that he freezes the air to a certain point where there are actual chunks of air that are solidly floating around, frozen. I mean, technically, his power does allow him to control ice to a certain degree, so it makes sense as to why the ice particles are sort of, still there. But yeah, it's a ridiculous ability that he has. As for the uniqueness of it, it also sort of granted him a sort of a level of super strength, because he was actually punching huge dents into the top of a car roof, and he was able to keep up at about 40 kilometers per hour against a car whilst skating using his power. So it obviously gave him enhanced limb strength, because it was more kind of like the ice was actually, being controlled around him. So therefore, sort of similar to that of mimicry, I guess. But instead covering himself in the armor rather than actually being living snow or ice.
Actually, to be honest, I just thought there was one more unique version of it that I saw.
Go for
it. Just came to my mind there. Okay, you know Captain Cold's sister?
Golden Glider.
Yeah, I quite like her power of, she has these skates, and where she moves, ice forms underneath her, so she can actually, move upwards in any direction, because ice forms underneath her to skate.
Is it ice?
Is it? It is ice. Yeah. They both have ice powers. That's the kind of ideas that Golden Glider uses. Has ice skates, and she skates.
I thought she had some gold based ability, hence why her name is Golden Glider.
Because she just wore gold.
No, fair enough. Oh yeah, no gold. Fair enough.
You just have to be based on your color. So it's just glides with gold, glides using ice skates, which I quite like.
Fair enough. I do actually like the idea that ice skating and the ability of power, certain power. But genuinely, one of the scariest things to me was actually seeing that scene in JoJo's where it's so cold that a guy loses his finger without realizing it. It's so cold that he blinks and then suddenly his eyelashes are frozen together. So he's trying to open his eyes, but his eyelashes are sort of stuck. There's a moment where he's trying to drive the car, but the brakes are frozen, and he can't drive at a certain speed, otherwise he'll start skidding all over the place uncontrollably. So it's sort of this whole thing of there's so many actions and other things. I think a power is just as scary when a person is wielding it as it is when it changes the environment. But it's even more deadly when the environment is becoming the most dangerous thing and you haven't even met the wielder yet of said power. I always think that those kind of abilities are always so interesting. You see it in JoJo's, you see it in... Funny enough, you do see it in, I think it's Stephen Strange, Doctor Strange, where those guys are sort of manipulating reality. And it's the little bubbles of reality that they can make, and even the weird things that they can do with reality is so weird and it's so crazy. And technically they can, I don't know, fold two parts of the physical plane against each other, so a building just squashes someone. And you don't even have to worry about fighting. It's just okay, I summon this thing and it just crushes you. Or, I just, change the temperature around me, and now everything about daily life is going to be so damn difficult. And especially if you're not built or, ready for the cold. Us British suffer very much because we are never prepared for the cold, even though that we know that it comes around at least one time a year. But yeah, I think it's such a unique set of circumstances to be able to control. Like weather is scary, but the most scary I'd argue is not lightning, but yet cold, because it's inescapable to a certain extent.
Nature be scary.
It could be. I guess it's because it could also be a solid as well as like a plasma or a liquid. You know, it can be like it is just this versatility that's scary. It can reach you somehow. There's like with lightning, you need to have a specific point usually, and with fire, well, that can cover everything, but it's like it's very flashy and easy to avoid. Where cold can creep up on you, and that can be pretty. Yeah, cold can creep up on you. That's why it's more scary.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that's definitely the component that makes it so damn dangerous. I mean, if you're in an environment and it's like it's being affected, and it's like, oh, this is someone else's power. That's probably the worst part about it. It's like, yeah, even if we get close quarters with this guy or whoever they are, it's like, even if we get close quarters with this person, who's to say that we'll be able to beat them because we're being this badly affected from this distance? I mean, yeah, not every long-range special AoE power user has close quarters combat capability, but it isn't exactly easy to fight someone in the cold. So, I actually do have a question for you then. So, if you were to put any power with cryokinesis or ice control or temperature control, what would you put? One extra power, and why?
Want to go first, Alex, or me? I do have one.
Yeah, you go for it. You go for it, Sam.
Okay, I would choose sound manipulation. Because pretty much all you would need to do is freeze something and then get the, can't remember the correct word, but the correct vibrational frequency, and it would shatter instantly. So it's pretty much all you need to do is freeze a building, get the correct frequency, and the building would collapse.
Technically, couldn't you do that anyway? Like, couldn't you just generate a vibration that could break a building without needing to freeze it?
True, but let's say your ice powers can only do so much.
And your sound powers can only do so much, so therefore they compensate with each other for making the building a little more brittle in certain locations, or even within the bottom part of it.
Like, let's give an example. Say you have ice bars, but you want to do like Mr. Freeze levels of ice, as opposed to Captain Cold, he goes all the way to absolute zero. There is a point where your powers will fail you if you're fighting anybody with firepower, because there'll be a point where they'll be like heating it up more than you can freeze it, shall we say? At that point, pretty much, you just have to get the correct frequency to disrupt fire.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay. Pretty much being able to disrupt frequencies is always a good power. Yes.
No, sorry.
Importantly, it means then you have two ways of destroying a building: either by getting the correct frequency of the.
I think you've actually. I think you've also accidentally stumbled on an incredibly good combination without actually necessarily talking about the sort of big elephant in the room. As you said, cold can sort of stop and falter certain things. For instance, it can ice can sometimes lose, if not almost always, against fire, but sometimes certain ice powers can win against fire powers. But even if they're not, sonic frequencies can actually disrupt excitation, meaning that like excited molecules will just disperse, therefore meaning there is no fire anymore. So it's almost like a form of like suffocation to a certain degree. So
you can put out fire then, but without having to use ice.
Exactly, you can put out fire with sonic powers. But even more so, not only sonic disruptions, as you said, but also just like having two different abilities like that. That's also incredible because people are like, oh, ice powers. That's a specific set of abilities. Sound and ice, sound and cold. Again, talking about sort of almost inescapable abilities. It's just kind of interesting that you chose those because those are really, really good.
Yeah. They're both great ways of both stopping a fire and destroying the building that's on fire.
Yeah. Don't know why you keep going for that angle, but fair enough.
I mean, sorry, Batman made me think of it constantly.
Fair enough. Alex, what about you?
I've got a good one actually. While you were talking about that, we talked about creeping frost and stuff. Like, I would choose cryokinesis and intangibility, so that I could be effectively invisible and phase through things as well, and like essentially just be like a living cold front, like just sort of like sweeping through towns like God, and just just freezing people, and no one would know I'm there. It would just be like just passing through, and people would try and like take me down, but again, intangibility would stop that to some extent. So I'd just keep on going. I will come up with a good, morally good superpower one day.
One day,
never.
I'd say both of those powers are really good. Now, when I was coming up with this, I was thinking, ooh, do I go teleportation? Do I go super strength? Do I go super speed? Do I go? I was thinking, intangibility, telepathy, stuff like that. Which, to be fair, all of these are really good. I do like every one of them that you guys have brought up. I do think that they're brilliant. But
however,
I am really torn with this one because I genuinely think that both yours and Sam's are actually really clever, and the one that I've gone for is the silly dumb one. Well, not silly dumb, but it is just sort of like a bit boring.
I'll go on.
Is it fire?
Yes, it is fire.
Because that's cool enough.
Because, like, okay, I can generate or manipulate fire, I can generate or manipulate cold, and basically I'll have a resistance to heat, I'll have a resistance to cold, I can fight pyrokinetics, I can fight cryokinetics, I can fight hydrokinetics, and I can fight terrakinetics. I can fight almost any kind of elemental user whatsoever. And if you have a powerful enough control over actual thermal manipulation, you can completely have absolute dominion over whether or not an entire arena around you is going to be cold or hot, or who you're going to be able to go up against. It is an absolute nightmare to fight someone who has both of their abilities and their weaknesses covered. And I just thought that's a really cool one. But yeah, it is the boring answer, and I will admit that it is the obvious boring answer.
It's still pretty OP though. I will give you that. That is a good combination, even if it is like the basic answer. It's because again you get the full dominion over everything, and that double resistance, not bad. None of us have got the resistance to doubles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Sam?
Say power connections. Say, I mean, there's always what's ocular powers. Is always a good one. So it means then that not only can you freeze people, but you can freeze people from a mile away through buildings, like X-ray vision.
Well, that's if your cryokinesis is that far.
Yeah, but it means that, okay, let's say you've got your range up. Let's say your range is as far as your X-ray. It means then you can like see through buildings, target specific people, and freeze them, as opposed to then you could stealth freeze people.
Oh, definitely.
So as opposed to making a big spectacle of it, you just like X-ray someone. I'm going to freeze their heart from the inside. That. So it's because let's be honest, you can't really do that with fire. That's one way of doing it. I think that's another power, ocular power, which would work. You can freeze people from inside.
Hmm.
I think if there's any.
You would be able to do that with flames and stuff, but you would be able to do it quietly if it's freezing, because people would freeze instead of going.
I tell you what. Another power, sort of just an interesting one to sort of go on with, is weirdly enough, I think the ability to Oh, okay. Sorry, my computer just made a noise. There we go.
Tell me ODSP didn't fail again.
No,
not again.
Honestly, I'm really glad that OBS didn't fail this time. Jeez.
God.
Sorry, guys. No cryokinesis this week. No. So, I have to be honest. You are quite close with that one, like the range one. I do think that you're sort of on the money there. I'd actually have to say telepathy, because if you have a strong enough power of telepathy, you can make someone's mind disconnect from their senses, meaning that they won't feel cold even though that their body is beginning to shut down. You could put them under illusions, you could brainwash them, so they're just like, yeah, I'm absolutely fine, falling over, just like completely like shutting down. I'm fine, bush, on the ground, about to pass out. I'm fine.
Actually, what you can do, you can do all those like every time there's a suicide in a movie where it turns out no, he's just standing on a thing of ice. Then that melted. It turns out it was someone else doing it. Do that to people.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, that would be the perfect crime, though, because like you're standing on a bit of ice and you just like, you've frozen them, but then it just like you just evaporate it, so it just looks like they froze to death of their own volition. Like no one would believe.
I was talking about the noose one, a noose around someone's neck in the ice, but yeah, that would also work.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah, sorry, I've seen that. Okay, maybe it's a trope only I've seen many times.
So, I'm gonna actually ask a question here. Do you think that there is a perfect creature to transform into, whilst also having a cryokinetic power?
I'm gonna say it. Polar bear.
Okay, polar bear with ice powers. I like it. What about you, Sam? First thing that comes to mind.
First thing came to mind was a lizard, believe it or not.
Okay, ice lizard. Like it. I think I've gone for a really boring one again.
I'll go.
Well, I immediately went to mythical because I immediately went to ice dragon, but
I mean, yeah, of course.
Outside of mythical, and this is a really weird one. Outside of mythical, I went wasp for some weird reason.
What?
I think it might have been because of Adrian, but like ice wasp. I don't know why. I just like the idea that you're just a little wasp on the floor, on the wall, on the ceiling, whatever. The entire room starts getting cold, and you have no idea why. And then suddenly you get stung by a wasp, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And suddenly you're injected with poison that's freezing you from the inside. That just terrifying. A wasp that has that much power in both its physical form and also its external ability to control the temperature of a room. That would be awful.
Because I've sent you that picture of that blue wasp, the bright blue, like cool, nice looking wasp, and that's what you immediately thought this must be a Pokemon. It'll turn into an ice wasp.
I can't honestly remember, but it does make sense.
Yeah. To be honest, I can imagine like if Adrian was like Elsa. Or is it the one from Frozen? Like Ice Queen?
Yes.
Instead of making a hive, it's like an ice hive. Just in the middle of nowhere.
By the way, the only reason I now know this is because Siobhan has been making me watch Once Upon a Time. And Elsa's in it for some reason.
I've never seen Once Upon a Time or Frozen or any of those.
I was like, is she supposed to be from Frozen? She was like, yeah, her name's Elsa. I was like, okay. I'm like, I don't really get what's going on. I haven't watched Frozen. She was like, do you want to watch it? I was like, no, I'll just get the context from the show. But yes.
I mean, there ain't none, really. There's just it's totally different, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
context.
Either way, I was actually going to say this one, because we actually didn't get to talk about this one except from Interrokinesis. effigy animation, the ability to create ice golems. I mean, that literally is a thing that is from Frozen. Or at least I expect so, since I assume that that's what that Olaf is. But also that she, in Once Upon a Time, she makes a giant ice golem.
Oh yeah, and she can do that in the movie as well. She can do that. For some reason, Olaf has sentience, and she doesn't know why. But that's something that's never resolved.
I've seen a few clips because Siobhanna's shown me a few clips where he's looking for someone.
That means she does have effigy animation though, because Arbiter doll on Olaf, but she didn't realize it.
So if anyone wants to play Elsa in a tabletop RPG, the best one is obviously Animite Tales. Elsa's an anomaly who has Arbiter doll.
Yeah.
If she would have done ice methods as opposed to snowman, because they can fly and they shatter when they die.
Pros.
Cons? I mean,
there is no cons. They're ice methods. They're wonderful creatures.
I'd say the only power that I genuinely believe would be a terrible fit would be Speedster. Because if you accidentally make the floor too slippery, someone is going to hit a wall at Mark 1 and is immediately going to be pasted.
I mean, unless, you know the way you can speed through door, you know the way you can get through walls if you get it at the correct frequency?
Okay, that's a different thing that Flash can do.
It means then, but if you freeze them, you know the exact frequency. It would be easier.
Again, no, because that's only if you are like the Flash and can use the same ability to phase, because I know that a lot of other speedsters can't do that, except from the ones from the DC universe that have the Speed Force and have learned that technique.
Yeah. Quicksilver can't do that. He's not as cool.
No.
In fact, whenever they did try to go to that universe, he did try to get the Speed Force. He didn't.
I swear there is a version that way he does get the Speed Force.
Oh, I remember it was in the comics he tried and failed. Because it's something that didn't blunt him.
Oh, yeah. I also know that there was another one which was, what is it, Speed Demon, where it's Barry Allen and whatever his name is to merge together. Ghost Rider, that's it.
Yeah. That's a cool combo. I think who did Captain Cold mix with?
I don't know. I think it was just that specific comic. I honestly don't know if they had Captain Cold in that one.
They didn't have the amalgam comics. I know, Robin mixed with Spider-Man. I think.
I know that they had
Superboy and Spider-Man.
I know they had Dark Claw, which was Logan Wayne. Which, if you don't get that, that's Wolverine and Batman together. But yeah, anyway,
the Joker and Sabretooth.
I think we've obviously run out of ideas. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about other comics at this point. I think that's pretty much it. I would say that we were going to actually talk about the extreme versions, but to be honest, it is what it is.
It's all extreme versions. It all is.
I mean,
it's extreme cold.
It's a powerful ability. You can either have the extreme that you can instantly flash freeze something at instantly turning it into absolute zero, or you could just have a widespread area across either the planet or an area or a country or a continent or whatever, or even freeze the ocean. Yeah, cool, awesome. But I like the more unique stuff, or even the weird ways that you can combine them with other abilities. But if you disagree, how about you put that disagreement in the comments and tell me why I am so wrong. If you enjoyed this episode, however, and you did like it, why don't you show your appreciation by liking the video? If you didn't like this video, or didn't think that you learned anything from listening to us babble on about cryokinesis, then there is definitely not a dislike button, and you definitely would not press it if it did exist. However, that subscribe button isn't going to hit itself, so do make sure that you do it. And
don't forget to ring the bell as well. You're getting saved by it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you want to get more notifications, I guess. Yeah. But if you want to be a square,
for all 5 of you listening to this,
yeah. But thank you very much for listening. Obviously, remember I am on Twitter at AnimiteTales if you want to chat me on the Twit box. And of course, we have Obscuracom as well with us, the famous Obscuracom, of course.
I've reached over 1,000 followers, so
Lucky.
yeah, I'm officially a celebrity now. So,
I'll celebrate when I have 100.
Everyone
never
follow
celebrate
me.
another on Twitter.
Also follow Joe, and also follow Sam, whose address I will be linking to you. You can physically follow him, and I won't. Don't worry, Sam. Sam just, I could hear the heart attack.
And stop.
Then, so.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and as always, I forgot what the outro is. It's been so very long.
Oh my God!
Alex says bye. I say my catchphrase, and then you say ciao ciao for now.
All right, here we go. The travel.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Alex.
Bye.
See you in the future.
And as always, I guess, I don't really know. Ciao ciao for now.